All right, welcome to the YouTube channel of singer, songwriter, recording artist Drew Davidsen. If you've never been here before, welcome. There's a couple things I always like to encourage folks to do when you first get here. That's hit the like button, click the subscribe button, and smash the notification buttons so you know when I make new videos, because I've got new ones coming out all the time as I have a new record out called You Turn It All Around. But I wanted to give you some backstory on my career, how I got started playing music. And I could go way back when and tell you about when I was 2 and I was competing with Beverly Sills at a wolf trap, and my parents realized people didn't pay to see me. I was making way too much noise. They had to kind of leave the lawn seating area and go to the car. And then there was, when I took a cello home in the 3rd grade, I thought it looked like a guitar. The bass was too big to take on the bus, and the violin was being played by girls. And then I turned it sideways, and my father thought maybe you want to play bass. And in high school, I became a decent bass player. A lot of one-string stuff at first, but then in the Navy, really discovered the guitar. I was baptized in the Jordan River and just had a real epiphany with playing guitar. And 2 musicians who really inspired me with my guitar playing, well, there were lots, but 2 that really come to pass are Al Di Meola with his record Elegant Gypsy, and then George Benson with his album Breezin'. And I would later actually meet George Benson. Fast forward from 1991 to 2013, George Benson endorsed my 5th album, True Drew. Said I was a fabulous guitar player to be around for a long time. It's a very humbling moment. He listened to it and wrote some really nice things about it. A manager I had at the time knew George and said, hey, I want you to check out this kid on guitar. I think he's got something special. And I then went to meet him in Pennsylvania at some festival he was playing at Berks. And I went backstage to meet him, and he met me like he would meet anybody. He was gracious, although I don't think he knew I was the guy. Later he said to my manager, Tony, you mean that guy? That little white guy is the guy who played them daggone funky guitars? Wow! So George, thank you for what you said. And that was a real monumental record. I worked with Preston Glass on that album out in LA, and I sent him a song and said I want it to sound like Hall & Oates meets Earl Klugh. And he got a friend of his to sing on it. It was Ron Tyson, the lead high harmony of the Temptations. He came in a studio in LA and sang with me, and I went to New York and worked with Norman Connors. Had a lot of great musicians on that record. And then I went on hiatus for a little bit, so I started making jazz albums here, and they were smooth jazz albums. I did very well. I charted on Billboard. My spin cycle was on there for almost 50 weeks, and I got a taste of this thing called music and this thing called concerts and playing, and I got to play with some of the greatest musicians on the planet. I mean, some of those smooth jazz cats are just so awesome. And I got blessed. I had a lot of great people on my records. I had Bobby Lyle be on my records, Gerald Beasley, I had Eric Marienthal on my albums, and I was recording in Nashville at the time, and then I branched out and went to LA and went to Nashville and went to New York. And then I started what I call my reinventing myself, my singer-songwriter self, which is what I'm doing now. Which I think, truth be told, is kind of what I always wanted to do, was sing too, but I was conscious about it. And that started with a producer friend of mine, Cedric Gibbons. He rebirthed some old songs I'd recorded and said, man, this is your next record, dude. It's already done. Let me mix it a little and clean it up. And that became A Good Life, that album. And then after that, I did a record called Flashback 17. In between that, I did another jazz album. But I've released a new album now called You Turn It All Around. And that it's really where I am. It's inspirational music. It's also a Christian and CCM, songs about God, songs about life, songs about love. And I'm so proud of it. It's been flying around college radio. It's been just amazing. And I feel so blessed to have been able to make music and release this album. And my wife, through all this, eventually I got married, which was something I never thought I would do. But my wife, Angie Davidsen, really encouraged me to get that music out there. How that started was I was recording songs and I wanted to find someone to produce me maybe. First I thought I wanted someone to mix it. Then I thought, well, what if I had someone produce me? Like back in the day, Eric Copeland from Creative Soul Jazz would produce me. He would go and pull these players in, like Gary Lunn on bass. This is Dolly Parton's bass player, but just so funky. he would bring these great players in, Craig Nelson, a lot of the same guys that like Kirk Whalum was using on his albums. They would come in and do stuff with me. And I did this album with Paul Jackson Jr. and Chuck Loeb, called We Three Strings, a Christmas album, but I was produced. And I thought maybe I wanted that, someone to produce me. So this producer in Nashville said, well, write 20 songs for him, we'll pick the best 5. Well, I don't know what you know about how musicians work, but it's hard for us to not start to see something as a project, at least for me. So when I got to about 17 songs, I started to go, you're just sounding pretty good. And my wife said, yeah, we've got to get this out there. And I thought, I'm just going to get it out there. What do I have to lose? Nothing. So I started ordering it and thinking about what song would go first. And I reached out to some radio promoters who said, hey, you got something really great here. And then I had a guy in LA that said, Drew, you got a monster hit. I mean, this is a guy who broke Aerosmith and all kinds of people, but something was a little bit fishy about how he wanted that to go. So I had the fortune to think about someone I knew, and I called a friend of mine from Minneapolis, John DeLang, who works with records and has had platinum albums, and I thought, I'd completely forgotten that he was in my purview. I said, how much I listened to something he did. And one track in particular, which I reworked, all my friends said, don't touch that song, it's great. And I thought, yeah, but what about it? But it's always the death of every musician to do that, because you can go down that rabbit trail and eventually overcook something. But I took another pass at it and I sent it to John. And John texted me back a few hours later and said, man, I gotta talk to you tomorrow about that tune. And I was kind of like, okay. And he said to me the next day on the phone, there's a lot to like about that tune. You got a big winner. And that's always humbling for musicians to hear. So it's called You Turn It All Around. It was the opening little bit when all of the album covers were flying in. And I started to really work that tune. And that tune then drove the whole record. I went back and reworked all these tunes and started to play guitar solos again, and reworked the drums, and brought the bass out. And so, okay, if I'm going to self-produce this, which I did, I mixed and I mastered it, I started to think about who are the artists that influenced me. Well, one is John Mayer for sure. I think he's one of the greatest guitar players possible. Is he a speed demon? I don't know that he's doing all of this all the time, but his phrasing. Plus, Clapton said he's like the best. So if Eric Clapton gives you an endorsement, that's a pretty big deal. So he definitely was an influence. Also, Peter Gabriel, I'm an 80s guy. So, Bruce Hornsby, all of those players are there. And then as far as guitar players, you'll hear on the record, you'll hear lots of Eric Johnson type soloing, Clapton soloing. Friends of mine have said Holdsworth. I mean, you can still hear the Benson in there and that kind of jazz influence, because I use those chord tones and those chord harmonics in my music, which is important to me as well, to put all that in there. But so that I kind of just wanted to give you the history of my career. Where am I going with all this? What's next? Well, we're in the midst of doing another big campaign for You Turn It All Around. Our goal here is to get to 10,000 subscribers this year. So if you haven't done so, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification button so you know when I'm making these videos, because I am committed to making lots of new videos. And, join the party. Join the fun. If you are an artist and you want to collab on something, reach out to me. I love doing that. I love making and recording music. I feel really blessed to have had this career so far. There's a lot in the future, but I wanted to just take a moment to share with you kind of how it came to be. I probably rambled a little and went around a lot of places. If you have questions about me or want to know more, you can visit my website through Davidsen.com. That's Davidsen. It's Norwegian. And I'd love for you to check out my new album, You Turn It All Around. It is everywhere on all streaming platforms, and I made some CDs too. We're going to have an album release, and we're really going to take it up a notch. So I love you all. Again, if you haven't done so, click like, subscribe, and I'll see you around the planet. Bye.